Welcome back to the MOOC course on research writing. My name is Aradhana Malik and I am helping you with this course. And today we are going to talk about revising. So, we are assuming that you have finished writing your manuscript, and we talked about conclusion, different parts of the manuscript, then we talked about writer's block. So, I am assuming that by this stage you have finished writing a manuscript. Now, what happens after you finished one document? You need to go through it and you need to revise it. So, let us see what we have here for you. Some of it may be a repetition, but I will tell you when we come to that point. Okay, revising. The purpose of revising is, one, to ensure that you have covered what you intended to cover through your work. So, you start out and you go through your paper, you read your paper, and then you try and make sure that you have covered what you wanted to cover, what you started out with. Then, to revisit your work after a break with a critical eye that may lead to newer insights. So, like we say, you sleep over your work. So, you revisit your work, you read your work after a break, and then you look at it with a critical eye. The acid test is, I always tell my students to read their work from the perspective of someone who is out to hurt them. So, someone who does not want to publish your work is reading your work. Look at your work in that manner, that if you were a person who absolutely did not want to publish this work, what were the mistakes that you would point out? And then be as critical, as brutal, as nasty towards your work as possible. You have done a fabulous job, but unless you look at it with the devil's eye or through the devil's eye, you will not be able to really make much improvement. So, that in turn can many times lead to newer insights. Now, different kinds of revision. Depending on the volume of revision, we have two broad categories of revisions. You have a large scale revision, which in which you develop new insights and rewrite a major chunk of the work or change the perspective or direction the work takes. And you have small scale revisions, which refer to plugging of gaps. Revision forms the basis for editing and proofreading. We will talk about these two aspects a little later. In the first reading, when you finished your manuscript, in the first reading, ask yourself, did I complete the assignment? Was I able to finish what I started off with? Then, was I able to convey what I wanted to convey? I wanted to state, I wanted to give a message. Was I able to convey that message or not? What are the strengths of my paper? What are the weaknesses of my paper? So, when we talk about paper, we are talking about your dissertation, we are talking about your journal papers, we are talking about proposals, anything that you are doing. Okay. A checklist. This is from the online writing lab of Excelsior College. Have I conveyed the significance of my ideas to my readers? Is my purpose clear? Ask yourself, is the purpose of your paper clear? Okay. Does your essay or document meet the requirements of your assignment? You are writing this paper in response to something. So, it is either a dissertation or a journal paper. So, is the document able to meet the requirements of what you are required to do? Okay. Is my focus too broad? Have I narrowed my topic too well? Am I specific, or am I just talking about a lot of things at the same time? Is my organization plan effective? So, I have made a plan. Is the plan of organizing my essay effective? Does it really take the reader from point A to point B? Okay. Is there a way to make the concept I am discussing clearer and more focused? If yes, then cut it, refine it. Is the voice or style I am using appropriate to my audience? Have I clearly defined any terms that I have used? Have I considered any possible objections to my position if I take a position in this research manuscript? Do I provide clear transitions between my ideas? Are there any gaps between my points? Are there any points that need further explanation or detail? Are there any points that need to be cut because they are not related to my focus? Are my sources credible? Have I addressed this credibility in my writing? So, we were talking about referencing. have you addressed these sources in your writing? Have I integrated my source material smoothly and effectively by providing signal phrases and or context for the information? Have I put source material in my own words as much as possible and used quotes only when necessary? Have I properly acknowledged all of my source material, including paraphrases and summaries? We did discuss this when we were talking about accrediting sources. Now, strategies. How do you start revising? Looking for patterns of opposition. So, see whether you have, you look for patterns of oppositions, annotate words and phrases that indicate oppositions or polarities. Within the same paper, it is important that you bring in oppositions and extreme polarities are extreme points of view, like two poles of the earth which can never come together but exist in unison or exist in the same space. So, what are these oppositions? Oppositions and a clear, strong defense of oppositions makes your paper richer and more credible. So, annotate words and phrases that indicate oppositions or polarities. Then divide a piece of paper in half lengthwise by drawing a line down the middle or set up a 2-column table on your computer. In the left hand column, list words and phrases you marked in the text. Enter in the right hand column the word, it shouldn't be word, it should be the word or phrase that is the opposite of each word or phrase in the left hand column. You may have to paraphrase or even supply this opposite word or phrase if it is not stated directly in the text. For each pair of words or phrases, note with an asterisk which one the writer seems to prefer. Study the words or phrases that seem to be valued. Do the same for the other list. How do they contribute to your understanding and acceptance of the argument? What do they tell you about what the writer wants you to believe? Now, how do you look for patterns of opposition? Annotate the selection for oppositions. List the pairs on a separate page. For each pair of words, put an asterisk next to the word that is preferred in the selection and examine the pattern of preferred terms to discover the system of values the pattern implies, and do the same for the unpreferred items. So, these are the words that indicate one side of the argument. These are the words that indicate the other side. Is there a balance? Are they in unison with each other, or are they really exploring both sides, and am I able to defend both sides equally well? Evaluating the logic of an argument. How do you revise for this? There are some tests for evaluating the logic of an argument. The reasons and support must be appropriate to the thesis. So, this you can do when revising. You write the first draft and then you go through and see for these, look for these things. Reasons and support must be appropriate to the thesis. All of the reasons and support must be believable. Reasons and support must be consistent with one another as well as complete. Testing for appropriateness. How does each reason or piece of support relate to the thesis? Is the connection between reasons and support and the thesis clear and compelling, or is the argument irrelevant or only vaguely related to the thesis? Testing for believability. How do you test for believability? Facts are statements that can be proved objectively to be true. The believability of facts depends on their accuracy. They should not distort or misrepresent reality. Their completeness. They should not omit important details. And the trustworthiness of their sources. Sources should not be qualified or biased. Statistics are interpretations of numerical data. Believability of statistics depends on the comparability of the data. Apples cannot be compared to oranges. You cannot compare two things in different contexts to each other. The precision of the methods employed to gather and analyze data. Representative samples should be used and variables accounted for. The trustworthiness of the sources. Okay. Examples and anecdotes are particular instances that, if accepted as believable, lead readers to accept the general reason or thesis. Believability of examples and anecdotes depends on their representativeness, whether they are truly typical and thus generalizable, their specificity. So, whether particular details make them seem true to life or not. Then, Authorities are people to whom the writer attributes expertise on a given subject. Believability of authorities depends on their credibility, on whether the reader accepts them as experts on the topic at hand. Then in testing for consistency and completeness. Now, in looking for consistency, you should be concerned that all the parts of the argument work together and none of the reasons or support contradict any of the reasons or support. So, the reasons that are in favor of one should not be contradicting anything else in the document. In addition, the reasons and support taken together should be sufficient to convince readers to accept the thesis or at least take it seriously. How do you check for consistency and completeness? You ask if there are any of the reasons are support are contradictory. Do they provide sufficient grounds for accepting the thesis? Has the writer failed to counter argue by acknowledging or refuting any opposing arguments or important objections? Then the checklist for global revisions. So, various ways in which you can revise your document. Now, when you are talking about a global revision, you are talking about revising the final revision of any document. Before we move on to this, I must tell you, I have told you this earlier also, when you write a document, whether it is small scale revisions or large scale revisions, you must be prepared to go through and revise and try and improve on your paper at least 30 to 40 times. Otherwise, it will not be suitable for publication. So, this is something that and you shouldn't be scared of it. And even after you submit, if the reviewers say not acceptable, outright rejection, that hurts, but you must be prepared for it. So, it's not really such a, it happens to all of us. Focus, there must be a clear focus to your document, and you must go through your document and make sure that the focus is clear. The organization, your document must be properly organized. We look at each of these in detail. Content, check for content, check for style, check for the use of quotations, and check for the use of other source material. This is from a handbook by Hacker. So, let us see what we have here. Okay. How do you check for focus? Is the thesis stated clearly enough? Is it placed where readers will notice it? Does each idea support the thesis? So, please make sure that the idea behind your paper is well focused. Then organization, can readers easily follow the structure? Would headings help? Do topic sentences signal new ideas? Are ideas presented in a logical order? Okay. Content, is the supporting material persuasive? Find out if the supporting material is persuasive. Are important ideas fully developed? Is the draft concise enough? Is it free of irrelevant or repetitious material? Are the parts proportioned sensibly? Do major ideas receive enough attention? Then, as far as your style is concerned, is the voice appropriate, not too stuffy, not too breezy? Breezy means light-hearted, casual. Are the sentences clear, emphatic, and varied? How do you check for use of quotations? Is the quoted material introduced with a signal phrase and documented with a citation? Is quoted material enclosed within quotation marks unless it has been set off from the text? Is each quotation word for word accurate? If not, do brackets or ellipsis dots mark the changes or omissions? We talked about how to use these. Then, checking for appropriate use of other source material. Is the draft free of plagiarism? Are summaries and paraphrases written in the writer's own words, not copied or half copied from the source? Has the source material that is not common knowledge been documented? So, these are some of the strategies for revision. Now, we will continue with some more discussion on how to edit and proofread your work in the upcoming classes. Thank you very much for listening.